Welcome, business, bourbon, and cigars listeners. And for those of you who decide to watch us, whether it's on YouTube or meplusultra.com, I'm your host, Scott Joseph. And today we're going to dive into a topic that I think every business owner needs to understand, and that's legal planning and the critical issues that face small businesses. My guest today, Matthew Fornaro, and 20 years of experience in business law. He's an attorney. He's got a proven track record in helping small businesses grow, navigate legal challenges, and build strong foundations with the right legal strategies. Whether you're just starting out, maybe you're managing a thriving business, this episode is packed with insights that you don't want to miss. We're also going to talk about how your attorney or a attorney can work with your accountants or your CPA so they can work together to ensure your business's success, along with essential legal planning, in my opinion, that every business owner needs to know. So before we get started, if you haven't done so, and I know I ask this all the time, so if you haven't done it, make sure you do it. Subscribe to Me Plus Ultra on meplusultra.com. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Me Plus Ultra Network. That way you can keep up to speed on all future episodes and catch up on the ones you missed. So let's get right into this thing. And Matthew, welcome to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars.
Thank you, Scott. I'm glad to be here.
Man, pumped. I think, this is something that I think entrepreneurs, they get all excited. They got this idea, or any business owner, they start their thing. They just want to get moving. They just want to go in, hit the ground running, build their products, improve their services, whatever it might be, start selling stuff, start retaining clients, all the typical stuff. And the last thing they want to think about, in my opinion, is the legal issues that they got to protect themselves from. So I'm looking forward to this episode. But before we get in there, I want the audience to kind of get an idea who you are. So share with us your journey into business law, and then specifically, like, what were the key milestones along that journey where you decided, I want to help small businesses?
Sure. So growing up, my dad had a small business doing medical supplies and medical supply distribution. So I grew up with watching him deal with issues related to small businesses. Parallel, I grew up, I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. So I went to undergrad and did political science, which is only good for being an attorney. So then I went to law school. And when I came out, I worked for like a boutique litigation firm doing commercial litigation. And then I decided I wanted to move and try some big law firms. So I went to 2 AmLaw 200 law firms and did more commercial litigation there. Then I came to the realization, like, I'm just a cog in the wheel. Where am I going? What am I doing? It's fun working for the man and getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, but, I wanted to change, I wanted to do something. So I had the opportunity to go to one of the 10 biggest law firms in the world, but I turned it down. Instead, I went and formed my own law firm with like the dedication to helping small and medium-sized businesses and use my skill set to help them, because I felt that they were underserved, kind of like my dad was when I was growing up. So that's how I got into the space.
I love it. Especially early on, any initial doubts, regrets, or like, oh crap, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, it's like, it's because, not only am I a business law attorney, but I'm a small business owner myself. So I understand all the issues that go with having a small business, which I think is essential to helping like a small or medium-sized business owner, is that I have that experience. And I know, there's a big difference between having to go out and make money and then every 2 weeks you get paid automatically by the man. So, I dealt with those early growing issues, those early, I don't want to say fears, but concerns and everything about setting up your own business, going out, having to get clients, having to perform, having to do all the back office stuff and all the setup stuff. So yeah, I dealt with all that stuff just like every business deals with. And now it's been almost 10 years. It'll be in March, it'll be 10 years I'll be on my own.
Man, I have to tell you, I think that completely sets someone like yourself apart. from other attorneys that work in law firms, because until you know what an actual business owner is going through, to me, it's just opinions and advice. You're going through the same exact challenges and barriers that they go through. And I have to tell you, in our Me Plus Ultra group, the attorneys that are in it, I hate to throw this on your profession, but that's all right. I used to sell cars, so people throw it at used car salesmen at me all the time. But some of the best attorneys from a business standpoint are the ambulance chasing. It's the easiest way my audience will immediately know who I'm talking about, right? The ones with all the commercials, the ones, because they have a business mindset. They're not, you don't see the big firms doing that, right? So, but they've got to generate customers. They've got to market. They've got to retain clients. They've got to do all the things a small business does. I like your model better. So with what you're doing, but I got to tell you, I just think that's a great point you made. What are some of the most common legal issues that you feel like small businesses face? And then more importantly, how do they avoid them?
I think the main issue that most small businesses face is lack of initial and startup planning, because like you had spoken about a little bit earlier, everyone's super eager to get into business and start doing stuff. So they don't do the necessary preparation and things that need to be done in order to start up the business, not just properly, but legally, and start off with a strong foundation. They kind of skip those steps. And those steps include like having a written business plan that talks about, all the elements of your business, what your business is, who you work with, what you're going to do, how you're going to get money, how you're going to pay money. Are you going to rent space? Are you not going to rent space? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself or your business in like 1 to 5 to 10 years? So a lot of people skip that step. And then they also skip these steps of when they incorporate, they either just go online, like here in Florida, you go on sunbiz.org and you take 5 minutes and you can set up a business online. Or they have like a legal Zoom or something like that where they pay them to set up the business. And they don't really go into the steps of, if you're a corporation, they don't have corporate bylaws, they don't have articles of incorporation, or if you're an LLC, they don't have an operating agreement. And if you start off without those documents, you're kind of, your foundation isn't set correctly, and you're going to have issues later on down the road, no matter how successful your business is, because you're going to have needed those documents and need that planning at some point down the road, no matter what your business is and no matter how successful you are. So that's probably the biggest issue with businesses and with startups and small businesses.
And so somebody might be listening or watching us and saying, all right, I get the legal stuff and the setup, but why do they need a business plan? There's nothing in the law that states that. I've got my own theory on that, but I'm curious on yours.
Yeah, because, it's like an old fashioned, like your grandma or something cooking a recipe or something back in the old days where you need like the recipe to make the food. Well, it's the same thing with the business plan. I mean, I can kind of go about it and do a business and make it happen. But if I don't have a written business plan, I don't have accountability, and I don't have, the roadmap of what, if this goes wrong, then I do this. If this goes right, then I do this. And also, in dealing with other businesses and like banks and things like that, some banks will not loan you money if you don't have a written business plan. So it's an essential step of starting your business to have it. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be, like a novel. I mean, you can find great business plan templates online, or you can have your business law attorney help you write one.
Yeah, I think there's a software out there. I think it's called Live Plan. There's probably a few of them, but Live Plan, it's one I've used in the past. And quite honestly, with AI now, a lot of the prompts that I'll use one tool to help me write another, and they go back and forth until I can start tweaking it and making it my own. But one thing about the plan that I think can carry over into the legal and at least save you some, I don't want to say major headache, but hassle, some friction down the road, if you've got a business plan and you know down the road that as this thing grows, I might be bringing on a partner, I might be doing this, I might be doing that. Well, if you plan to have a partner, it could change drastically the type of, do you want an LLC? Do you want a corporation? Because there's different advantages and disadvantages and advantages to having either one of those. So if you don't have a plan, you have no direction of where you're going to go. You might be setting yourself up, and then 10 years down the road, you're like, why didn't I just do this as an LLC? Or why didn't I just do this, sub S or whatever it might be? What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's exactly true. I mean, your business is going to change and you're going to hit roadblocks and unexpected turns and things like that. And that's why if you have the business plan, it'll help you navigate that rather than you looking retroactively and being like, well, I should have done this or I should have done that, or now I'm precluded from doing this or doing that. So that's part of what the written business plan is all about.
All right. So we talked briefly and you're big on accountants and the attorneys working together. How important is that collaboration? And then more importantly, walk us through how they can work together effectively.
Sure. So as part of your group of professionals who you should have around you helping you as a business owner, part of that group, you need to have a business law attorney and you need to have an accountant as part of that group that helps you, because we look at things, we do things, and we worry about things in our own professions, in our own areas, so that you don't have to and you can focus on working on your business. Now, you can do things from a legal standpoint, lots of different ways. You can have different business organizations, you can have different governing documents, you can have different plans, but you can only do things so many ways from a accounting standpoint. Like if you set up the wrong entity, you're going to get killed on your taxes, or if you set up the wrong entity, you're going to get held for liability that you shouldn't have. So that's why the accountant is essential from the beginning to figure out with the attorney and with the client, what business organization works best, not just from a legal standpoint, but from an accounting standpoint that makes you have the least amount of tax liability or the least amount of expenses or the least amount of headaches during tax season. And then obviously we're both fiduciaries, so we both have your best interest in mind. So that's why we're working together to, come up with the best plan as a cohesive plan from a legal standpoint and accounting standpoint to make sure that you're set.
I hope that there are people watching this, as many people watch it as the people that download it, because you heard the door open and I saw your hand, but you didn't break stride. You didn't break stride. You loved it. Hey, let me ask you. All right. So with your industry as attorneys, I think it is common, especially in small businesses. It's not like I have an attorney on payroll, right? So I'm using them fractionally or hiring them for specific tasks, or maybe I could have them on retainer. I could have them on, but more than likely, I've just got a great relationship with an attorney. These are the attorneys I use. They're on record for being my attorney. And when I've got an issue or a situation or a question, I call them, right, or email them. But with accounting, it's almost like small businesses don't think like that. And I'm going to give you a story about some of the struggles we had, because I've got my very first company, J&L Marketing, still around today, 30 years in. And as we grew and grew and grew, we got to a point where we thought, man, we need to really get a CFO. We need someone that really knows the finance in and out. And we'd hire these people. And quite honestly, our business it got a lot bigger. It got a lot more profitable, but it didn't get a lot more complicated in terms of what it really required from a financing standpoint. So the people we were hiring, competent, great people, but bored out of their mind. So we couldn't retain them. because it's not the type of challenging job they needed. And finally, we were along this dumb path again, and getting ready to do it again. And the person we're recruiting goes, "I'd be bored there." He goes, and that's the only reason we figured this out. He goes, "What you guys need is just a bookkeeper that does a great job, and you hire someone to come in, and I've got a person you can use, a fractional CFO that comes in, monitors, works with your bookkeeper to make things, but always sets things up, prepares everything for your CPAs and does all that stuff." Our books have never been better. Our strategies have never been better. By the way, our payroll appreciates it that much more. And so the reason I'm bringing this up, because when you're talking about this team of attorneys or attorney at least and an accountant, it doesn't mean a small business has to just add all this payroll, because an attorney and a CPA or an attorney and a competent accountant is not inexpensive, especially on a small business, and especially if someone's starting out, right? It's not something they may have initially budgeted, but you don't need to have that. Like, you're not billing me for every second of every day like a full-time employee is, right? You're billing me for the time you spend on my account, right? And so, and you can get that on the accounting side too. Do you have any experience with that? How do you see that working? What would your advice be on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not, I'm not driving your taxi and have the meter running the whole time. If people need to reach me or have questions or whatever, just email me or call me and I'll answer your question. And the same thing with the accountant. I know you said a lot of people don't have the mindset of consulting with an accountant outside of tax time, but for my business, I ask my accountant questions all the time. I email them all the time because there's all kinds of strange things that happen throughout the year of weird, IRS stuff and whatever, just stuff happens. So, I mean, you always have, we're not, we're always available, but we're not always, billing you or doing stuff for you. I mean, keep us in mind, but we're not there, with our hand in your pocket trying to take your money. We're there to help you and use us as needed.
And quite honestly, you brought up something there that I think is important. I feel like it gets more and more complicated to keep up with everything you have to do, from filing this and that. And I think there's some new law going around with, if you're an LLC, you got to start filing once a year with something. I've got people to help me with that. So that's the reason I don't know the technical. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you have to identify every year who the beneficial owners of the business are.
Yeah. So when you've got an accountant and an attorney working together, those processes can be figured out to where, like, for instance, my CPA takes care of that for me. It's not something I'm doing, right? Are there things on the legal side from an attorney side that you guys can do to, I guess, basically automate for the business to where they don't have to mess with that? And like you said, they can focus on their business.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I do legal stuff. The accountant does accounting and financial stuff. That's what we do. That's why we do it. So you go and run your business, and that's why you have us around, is to handle those situations.
And I would imagine some of those situations might be intellectual property type, like trademarks, things like that. So do you have, if I'm working with you, right, you're my attorney, and, trademarks come up, right? So you got to refile, or are they staying active and all that other stuff? Is that something you would handle for a small business?
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of the intellectual property stuff. If it's like run-of-the-mill stuff or whatever, you have questions or whatever, yeah, I'll handle it. But just like any other area of the law, if you have questions and you come to me, or you have issues that, I know how to answer, I can do whatever. But I would rather have you, because I work with, people who focus on specific areas of the law, like not specialists per se, but people whose whole focus is like intellectual property law. So if you have like some heavy IP issues, I'd be like, Scott, I can help you out or whatever, but I would much rather you go and see my friend Derek, and Derek will help you with all your IP issues. I'll help you with all your general business issues. and some IP issues, but I'd rather you go see my friend who that's his whole focus on. So we make sure we get you in the right hands. And it's the same thing with like labor and employment stuff. Like, yeah, I can answer and help you with certain labor and employment things, but when we get into heavy regulation, heavy state and federal regulation or whatever, I'll refer you out to someone else so that I know you're in the best hands. And that's all they do is that area. So you're going to get the right, results and right representation and right answers that you need.
Yeah. So you've worked with businesses from early stage to more advanced business development stages. What's the relationship between the two in terms of the legal planning that needs to happen?
It's the same as the beginning to the middle. I mean, if you're already established and you don't have the stuff you should have done to begin with, we can go back and fix it by doing it now. And if you already have the stuff in place, like all the governing documents and like your business plan or whatever, we can continue to modify it as you grow and continue to go through business. Cause it's like, it's a cliche, like it's a living document, but it's true. So your LLC agreement on day one probably isn't going to be your LLC agreement on year 10. So that's why you want to always constantly, not constantly, but at least on an annual basis, you want to revisit all your documents and update them. And then if you're a new client who has an existing business and you didn't do it to begin with, we got to do it now.
So funny you said that. So the agency is 30 some odd years old, and there was a period where it brought on a partner. I brought on a managing partner, gave him equity. And reached out to our attorney and, drawing up all the necessary documents. We're sub S. So it was, we're doing an employment agreement, operating agreement, all this type of stuff. And they asked for some of the early documents that I had prepared way back in the early 90s in terms of, what could I legally do from a board standpoint? Well, how many shares did I have? What could I do? I hadn't seen these documents in 20 something years. I was like, and it was a hassle trying to find them. But I would have never thought as a sole owner that, what do you mean I can't just sell these things? And I'm a seasoned business person. Because there was no partners involved in it up until that point. So I'm like, what do you mean I can't just sell this? Why do I need all this stuff? Who cares about all this? So your recommendation in terms of not only doing all this, but then revisiting them and keeping them up to speed would have saved me a lot of time. Probably a little bit of money too.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sure those documents you pulled from the 90s were like typewritten font and crazy stuff.
It took just as long finding them. Share with us a memorable story of a business that avoided a major pitfall because they sought some advice early on.
Well, I can just tell you a genre of story of a class of people who I always help out are franchisees. So I can't tell you how many franchise agreements that I've seen for, businesses or people who want to get into business that are just terrible, that they comply with like the federal franchise laws and all stuff like that, but they're just terrible businesses, like terrible. And it's people who want to get into business for themselves, particularly a lot of immigrants and stuff have to, for like EB-5 visas and things like that, they have to have a viable U.S. business in order to get their green card or their citizenship. So they're desperate for businesses, and sometimes, they can't come up with a business on their own. So they're solicited by these franchisors, and they're just horrible businesses. Horrible.
And I don't understand. Why would a franchisor, why would you go after someone? In other words, why would I get that it's a fast dollar, but why go after a person with zero experience, zero knowledge, that doesn't fully understand what it's going to take to make that franchise location or whatever it might be really go? Why?
Just
What
to
causes that?
just to get the contract signed and get the financing. A lot of the franchisors do, like, internal financing or have close relationships with the financing and stuff. And they have personal guarantees, and they know, for instance, for the immigrants, you have to stick with the business, otherwise you're not going to be in the U.S. anymore. So they know that they got them, and they're just, I mean, I don't want to name any names, but they're just, conceptually, they're bad businesses. I mean, they're like,
Well, don't name names, but give us examples without naming names.
all right,
If you can do it, even like, I know the industry's probably going to give away some, but dance around that at the best you can.
All right. For example, all right, stuff. I'll just leave it at stuff that you need for computers. Okay. So this franchise is, or computer accessories. Okay. And you can figure out what accessory I'm talking about. An accessory that requires you to put paper in and paper comes out. Okay. So for the stuff that requires the upkeep on that, okay, there's a franchise for that. That's all they do is sell that stuff, okay, in a brick and mortar location in 2024. Okay. So not only do you deal with the fact and their price point is more expensive than, or as expensive or more expensive as, the other people. So first you have the whole concept of, why wouldn't I go, if I'm into buying stuff in the real world, why wouldn't I go to Office Depot or wherever, or Staples, and just buy the stuff for less money? Okay.
Just have it delivered from Amazon.
Yeah. Then there's option two. Okay. Or it's 2024. I can have it delivered to my house or to my office from Amazon for free delivery within 24 hours of, a much cheaper foreign made version of what they're selling for literally 50% the price. So that's, probably one of the most egregious franchises that I've seen, that actually tried to talk someone out of, but they went into it and then they didn't do well. I can tell you another one too. I'll name the industry on this one because it's too generic to figure out. But like post office stores. Okay. Like, obviously we've all heard of like FedEx Kinkos, and we've all heard of, UPS store. Okay. It's the lower tier ones that we haven't heard of are these franchises that, again, heavily cater to Asian, South American immigrants, whatever, where they have it's just not competitive versus the UPS store or versus, the FedEx Kinkos, and they just push these franchises. And, I try to tell people, like, that's a very rough market to get into. It's a very established market. It's very thin margins. It's very hard work. You'd be much better trying to do something else. But then there's tons of franchises that just push that. And then, of course, food, restaurant, dessert, that kind of stuff. Those franchises are always highly volatile. Restaurants are highly volatile, probably the most volatile thing you can get into. And these people push the hell out of these restaurant and dessert.
You got to really know what you're doing. I think you got to know what you're doing, or be part of a peer group, or have a good circle around you that knows what they're doing if you're going to get into the restaurant part of it.
Yeah. And we're not talking about starting like a McDonald's or a Subway. We're talking, again, very esoteric restaurants and concepts that you've never heard of that get pushed. So that's probably, I would say, an ongoing thing that I deal with a lot, or when customer or clients come to me and they're like, oh, I have this opportunity to invest in this business. And then I look at it and I'm like, well, have you spoken, of course I work with the accountant. I'm like, have you talked to your accountant about how you would structure this? And have you spoken to not the banker that they want you to use, but your own banker or whatever regarding finances on how you're going to take out a huge loan and pay for this? And the answer is always like, no. And they haven't thought it through. They just have the pitch. And, I've steered a lot of people away. Not that I want to steer them away. I mean, I want you to go into business and be successful, but I want you to be in the right business. I don't want you to just take something for the sake of taking something.
Yeah. How bad of a problem is this? Like, I've never, obviously I've interviewed franchisors on here. I mean, John Hewitt from Jackson Hewitt. So people that have had a lot of success. But I've never.
That's not who I'm talking about.
No, I know. But so I've never thought of it the way you're describing. And I'm like, how big of a problem is this?
It's big. I mean, look, for instance, I'm in South Florida. So obviously we have a huge international immigrant population here from all over Central, South America, the Caribbean. So it's a lot more acute here than it would be in Midwest America or somewhere like that. But there's these franchises where, they're supposed to be in business to make you have a, successful franchise concept, but coincidentally they're aimed at getting you, here's your business opportunity for you to get your visa. And, you'll see that it's not like some conglomerate or some established business person is getting into these franchises. It's always people who have never been in business before or something like that are getting into these franchises.
How much, I'm curious, out of all the business you do, if you know this, you may not know this off the top of your head, but what percentage of the work that comes your way is in this area? Roughly.
I don't know. It fluctuates. It's probably 10%-ish, maybe.
All right. So a little bit smaller, but man, I would imagine it's got to be a decent market to go after. I mean, I'd want to do it just to protect people.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the stuff too, there's a lot of, obviously people are dedicated in, specific franchise law attorneys, but a lot of the time they're representing the franchisor, and the franchisee is either just has no attorney or they just have, whatever attorney they have working for them being like, oh, the documents look good. They're not giving them, they're talking about the legal thing where the offering, right, legal, whatever. They're not from a counselor / business advocacy side where it's like, this business sucks. They're just like, well, theoretically, all your documents are in order. So you can go out and, be a shoe cobbler now, or be a telegraph operator, or, be an ice distributor, just things that are just totally.
Well, I feel like it's awful that they prey on the visa part of it just so they can stay in. That's the part that kind of sucks. What part of Florida, by the way? You said South Florida.
Broward County.
Okay. Because my wife and I, we just bought it won't be ready for a few years, but we're going to be coming to Miami. So we'll be neighbors soon.
That's the next county down. So
yeah. What we talked a little bit about this in terms of just so much to keep up with. Laws are constantly changing. I feel like, oh man, now we got to do this and now we got to do that. What's the most productive or efficient way to ensure that we can stay as a business owner, stay compliant, whether it's local, state, or federal laws, especially as we grow?
I mean, obviously my answer would be have a business law attorney and accountant that you work with that it's their job to be on top of, regulatory changes and legal changes. That way you don't have to, be reading, the Wall Street Journal or whatever and be like, oh, this changed or that changed. So yeah, that would be my
So
answer.
how would you advise me? Let's say I come to you and let's say I'm a new business owner, either brand new, starting something, or a couple of years in, and I'm looking for an attorney to help me with a specific thing. I can tell you that I've never, especially in my first 10 years, now as time went on and businesses grew and my need to have conversations or have questions with my attorneys increased in frequency because you just got more situations happening. Then I've got a dialogue that's happening nonstop where an attorney might say, you do know you got to do this, this, and this. But if I'm early on, I may not be talking to my attorney. And this goes kind of to the heart you're saying when you're saying have a strategy with the accountant and the attorney. But early on, I might not be talking with my attorney as frequently. What would your advice be to make sure, just like you said, how's that expectation set with an attorney, I should ask, to where they are always coming back and saying, make sure you're on the lookout for this, this, and this. Do you need me to help you with that? Or because I can tell you my early attorneys wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing relationship. So, check in, I would say check in with me at least once every 6 months, if not once every quarter, just to be like, is there anything new I should be on the lookout for? Should we review or do something? And then like also proactively, like I have all kinds of media presence and like mailing lists and stuff. So I have all my contacts that I send out like updates to, where it's like, okay, like for instance, the identifying the beneficial owner of a business law. Like, yeah, you're going to have to do this year, otherwise you're going to get fined and bad things are going to happen. So it's kind of a two-way street where, as the business owner, ultimately it comes down to you being responsible for your business, and you want to keep in touch with your attorney and your accountant, but also it's great if your attorney or accountant are proactive and kind of keep you in the loop.
Yeah, I think if I had to start over, I would set those expectations up front, saying, listen, I expect you anytime something new or something about my business comes that you reach out. Having said that, I think it would be wise, whether it's, depending on the business, quarterly, every 6 months, once a year, we have a sit down and have a prearranged scheduled meeting. So it's not something we get a year in and being like, oh yeah, we never met 6 months ago. Let's get it on the calendar ASAP. And I think you start that relationship and set the proper expectations. I can tell you, the business owners I know, I don't know many that do that. And I'm sitting here listening to you talk and I'm thinking, all right, what process should I have set up from the beginning when I did all this that could have made this a little bit more, I guess, smoother? Do you see a best process for that? Like, I mean, how do you set those initial combos? Do you initiate it or you expect them to do it?
It's a combination of both. Like if you're a new client or whatever, I'll be like, look, I'll reach out to you proactively if something changes that I know of that affects your business. But at the same time, reach out to me anytime you have any changes in your business or whatever. And I get emails and I get phone calls from clients all the time, and I'm not like billing them for whatever. If you send me an email and just be like, hey, I want to do this, what do you think? Well, I'll shoot you back a quick email and say whatever. Or if you call me up and be like, hey, I have a quick question. So that's kind of how I execute on that and what I do in my practice. But there's some clients I have to stay on top of because they're into like a lot of litigation and stuff. So I keep on constant contact with them. But there's there's other people who, like I said, it depends when, if they're comfortable reaching out for you or you want to set something up.
Let's talk about the litigation part of it. So, man, it can be good. Once you get involved in that, it can be very difficult to pull if you're in some type of lawsuit or heads that way. Once you're in, it can be very difficult or costly by the time you do get out. Because it's just like, this side does this, then this side does, everybody's got to start protecting themselves. And so it just keeps snowballing, and then that expense and that bill keeps coming up. So let's talk a little bit about a legal foundation that you would advise people to set up that might help resolve disputes and avoid those type of litigation situations.
All right. Well, obviously, my main thing would be for you to make sure that you have written documents for everything, not just your governing documents and your things like that, but for contracts, like when you buy or sell something, or part of your business model, like if you're whatever it is you do, you provide services or whatever, have contracts for everything, and make sure. And I mean, you don't have to have an old fashioned contract where it's like, here's a piece of paper, or sign it, whatever. I mean, it's part of like your online, you send someone a text or whatever, acknowledge here, send back, DocuSign stuff, all stuff like that. If you have contracts that govern your relationship with other businesses and other entities and other people, that's going to help you avoid a lot of issues, because the contract is your outline of what governs the relationship between you and the other person or the other thing. And it says who does what, when, where, why, how. And if they don't do it, it says what happens. So that's a large way to avoid problems, is so there's nothing left for chance. There's no incidents or whatever. It is a written contract. It says, I do this, you do this. If we don't do this, here's what happens, and here's how we resolve it. So that eliminates a lot of the ambiguities. That eliminates a lot of the uncertainties. And then if that doesn't help it, then you have your contract in place that helps you when it's time to file a lawsuit.
Man, I got to tell you, and this covers even non-lawsuit situations, what you're describing. So my dad passed in 19, but in 2020, so we're between 19 and 20, we're going through the process because he was a business partner in one of our dealerships, and I had other partners in this store as well. So, our operating agreement basically said that, the rest of the parties, we need to buy that out because my mom's still alive, and while she'll play no part in the stores, she's getting bought out, and then the shares get distributed, depending on the percentages we own, to everybody else. So we fixed this on other stores, but on this first store, the operating agreement didn't have a systematic way of just determining the value. So here I am, the son, and I got these partners. I'm right in the middle of this shit, because on the one hand, I got to get what's best for my mom, and every dollar I get from my mom also costs me and my partners. And so there's this horrible, it's not just the tough, you don't want to have those type of discussions with your partners if it can be avoided. It's much better off just having this pre-done and everyone agreed to, because it also plays an emotional toll on you. That's I'm sitting there battling for my mom at the same, and no one wants to battle me. No, they're not really battling me, but at the same time, it's like, well, it was horrible. I hated being in the middle of that. And fortunately, we had a second store that my dad was involved in. It was all laid out. There was no discussion. It was just like, okay, this is the number. Done. So much better. So it's not just a legal lawsuit. It's like just different situations that you can deal with and make easy, because you don't want to have to spend time doing stuff that's not productive and doesn't move forward. I hate working backwards.
Yeah.
And
that's why that's why all these documents are proactive in their approach. And then if something bad happens, then you react and use the documents.
Yeah. Perfect. Love it. All right. So, as a mentor and instructor, what's the most valuable lesson that you share with new entrepreneurs and even attorneys?
Well, first believe in yourself, obviously
Yeah.
focus on your goal and go forward. But at the same time, it's planning, man. You got to have, you have to have your written business plan. You have to have all your documents and just plan and take it step by step. Don't try to do everything at once. I know you're eager to go into business. I know you're eager to do whatever, but just, believe that you're going to succeed and then make it happen by following step by step your written business plan, your governing documents, your contracts for dealing with other people. And then if something happens, it happens. But if not, then it's fine.
Yeah. All right. So I want to thank you, man. As we were talking, I'm just sitting here thinking, God, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done that. And you end up spending the money anyways, and it costs you more if you don't do this stuff up front. And that's what I don't think people don't think this stuff through, but it always, if you're not prepared and you don't do these things ahead of time, eventually it's going to get you. And I'm not talking about lawsuits, whether it's time, effort, money. It's going to be at least 3 times more in time, effort, or money handling it after the fact versus just handling it up front. So I really appreciate what you shared with us today. I thought you provided some good actionable insights. Talk to us. What's the easiest way if there's some small business owners out there that want to reach out to you? What's the best way they can reach out to you?
Well, the easiest, I'm all over the internet, so I'm not hard to miss. But the easiest way is just go to my website, which is fornarolegal.com. And then it's got all my social media. It's got my phone number, my email address, whatever you want to get a hold of me with, it's all on there.
And what we will do for the people watching, or if they go to Me Plus Ultra, I'll make sure to put that link in our show description. So if they're accessing the podcast, I guess from our website, they'll be able to easily just go and click that and go right to you. So we'll do that as well. And as always, everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our sponsor, Me Plus Ultra, at meplusultra.com and the Me Plus Ultra Network on YouTube for more valuable episodes just like this. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to Business Bourbon and Cigars. Cheers, everyone.